The priest class, since its inception, has always had a really clear and direct purpose in the actual game. But in this video, I'm going to show you a missed opportunity that Blizzard could have used to make priests much more awe-inspiring in their class identity. In the lore of WoW, priests are just casters that are mashing together two magics that other people already have mastered way better. You're either a diet Holy Paladin or a weaker Affliction Warlock. Eventually, Shadow Priests get a much more unique identity in Legion as a void-focused caster, but I'm going to explain how easy it would have been to make this class feel so much more heroic. Strap yourselves in, subscribe, and let's get started. When we think about Priest, we think of the holy magic healer guy, with of course some dark shadow spells and the eternally awesome shadow form. I think when you play WoW for the first time and you see somebody in shadow form, it makes you just want to log out and reroll a Priest and get to level 40 immediately. Priests were always an essential class as the support guy since the very beginning of WoW's creation, and that's why they have really old school RPG aspects in them, like their two racial abilities. And the lore for them was always really generic and stale, until TBC came out. The introduction of the Naaru being where the light is channeled from is a huge addition to the lore, which also plants the seeds for the void stuff that comes in later. The leader of the Draenei, Prophet Velen, is actually almost entirely what I'm talking about in terms of the priest coolness. Velen is actually really cool. Yeah, he's a priest and he does all this priesty stuff, but he has this knowingness to him and this wisdom where he has the ability to cleanse and heal people beyond just their minds, but their trauma and their mental wounds as well, which is why he is a savior and he's worshipped by his people. And the Draenei definitely needed a savior. In vanilla, there were no surviving Draenei, they were extinct in Outland. After being victims of the subjugation of Illidan's army, they were malformed into the Broken, and you can see them in Blasted Lands and the little outpost in Swamp of Sorrows, and that was all that was left of them. Blood Elves were kind of like this too. After Arthas' ravaging of the Sunwell, it's never mentioned in Warcraft 3 that the civilization was actually rebuilt. The random scattered surviving High Elves were just refugees spread across Azeroth who happened to be traveling whenever that event happened. Almost nobody realizes how much of a major rewrite this was to the existing lore, but that's because it was a good thing. There are so much worse rewrites that happened later on in the WoW lore. Not only did Draenei and Blood Elves being playable help Blizzard sell TBC boxes for the expansion, we all as a community kind of agree that this was a solid W. But out of all the classes, the Priest was affected the most by this because up until this point, they were attuned to light or shadow magic for pretty much no reason. And that, I think, is where the problem starts. They should have had a much bigger focus on controlling people's minds and souls. Mind control is a really cool concept, and it ends up finding its way into video games all the time because it's just a fun superpower, and it seems like it just kind of randomly ended up on Priest for pretty much no reason. But I actually don't think that was a mistake at all. I think to purify somebody, you have to know them, you have to have access to their mind, and with that power, you could also corrupt them. Being able to see into the future also plays into this because the future can have good things or bad things. And knowledge of the future in ancient stories usually ends up corrupting people somehow anyway. Medivh can see the future, he is the prophet, and he ends up corrupted. Now, if you go by the game lore, he was corrupted by his mom, Aegwynn, killing the avatar of Sargeras and then getting corrupted while she was pregnant. Or if you follow the movie lore, he was tempted by fell magic, but let's just pretend it was the knowledge of the future, okay? And that plays into my point because whenever you see all the suffering that's in store for not only you, but everybody and the people that you care about, you can't help but get kind of messed up from it. I guess that kind of makes it like pre-traumatic stress disorder instead of post. There's also that super famous Nietzsche quote, if you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back at you. If you see something and you fully understand it, it integrates into you, and that could be a very bad thing. As well as if you have the knowledge of people's minds, you know all their deep dark thoughts and all the bad things that they've done, and that could mess you up pretty hard. The prophet archetype always has control over the minds of lesser beings and subjects. If we think about Malzahar from League of Legends, his ult is literally Mind Flay. It's the exact same thing, same animation and everything. But Malzahar isn't a priest, he's a dark prophet. It's kind of the same thing in Arcane Season 2 where Victor cleanses people, he is light forging his followers. And just because you're using the light to mind control people, it can still be a very bad thing, like Exarch Yrel leading the fanatical army of the light in alternate Draenor, the Scarlet Crusade, and the Prime Naaru Zira attempting to force purify Illidan in the Rejection of the Gift cinematic. So theoretically, the more you let the light into your own mind and channel its power, the more you should be able to do that to other people. And so Velen expressing his prediction of the future, being a good guy, leading his people in the way of the light, in a much more real way, he should be capable of some extremely dark mind control stuff that we never get to see. It's also kind of implied a little bit that if you're worshipping a Naaru and getting light magic from it, and it dies or gets corrupted, then you'll be getting void magic from it. But we don't really see that play out with the priest. The Blood Elves are kind of siphoning power from the Naaru with like arcane power and not really like light or darkness. Later on, they make it so every faction of priest gets their own little like Naaru-esque thing to worship, like a wild god or something like that. And it's kind of implied that if that was corrupted, all of the priest would get corrupted, but that never actually happens. I wish that it did. It would be really cool. So in short, the Naaru or the Void can pass their power on to people, and as a priest, since you can control other people's minds, you take it a step further and you pass it down from you to other people, so you're kind of also acting like a Naaru or a Void Lord. In the base vanilla lore, Shadow Priests are just shadow dudes using shadow magic because big light causes big shadow. But with this much more concrete magic system that I'm proposing, it just fits a lot better. And if we bring it all together, what does it mean? Well, if we redesigned the marketing of the priest class, we could keep all of their abilities exactly the same, but we just have more of a focus on mind control. You are like a mind control wizard guy, and with that mind control, you are making people do good things or bad things, and that brings in the light and the dark and the good and evil stuff into it. You see visions of the future, maybe through other people's minds or through some kind of intuition, and whenever you see what's in store for you in the future, your hope grows and you get more spiritual, or it wanes and you become a dark prophet and you're all edgy and you're not looking forward to it. Obviously, you can't tell the future in video games. However, possessing the minds of others has endless gameplay implications that we get explored a little bit. Like sometimes mind controlling stuff is a good idea, but it's usually really specific. It's not like an actual core gameplay mechanic or involved in any of your like abilities. It's just one ability. And throughout the expansions, we never get more mind access powers. We just get more light powers or void powers. And honestly, I'm not even really complaining about this. They get Void Form and Legion, which could literally consume them, and it was one of the coolest things that Blizzard has ever done to a class in the history of the game. And as the expansions go on, Shadow Priests honestly just keep getting cooler and cooler abilities. Just like Death Knights get like ICC mechanics as their abilities, Shadow Priests get Old God mechanics as theirs, and it's just really cool. Holy Priest get like chakras and meditations and stuff in Cataclysm, but they literally add a monk class that kind of takes away from that energy a little bit. And that's all light versus dark stuff. I'm just saying if it was built on the foundation of having the ability to influence others naturally, and that was your superpower, it would make way more sense. And we wouldn't have this weird, stupid thing where Discipline and Holy are both just good guy healer boys. Discipline could be like the neutral talent tree and spell school, where you just have mind control and it's not good or bad, and then Holy is the good guy mind control and Shadow is the bad guy mind control. We just kind of skip over the neutral mind control stuff, and it makes it seem like the light or the void powers are being used to influence others instead of you influencing others and then putting the light or void in there. And that kind of implies that the priest is just kind of a vessel for these powers and it has no power on its own, and that's just less cool. It just kind of makes you a guy that goes to church all the time or is just really edgy. It also totally goes against Illidan's denial of being reborn in the light and killing the Prime Naaru. That whole thing was trying to point out that these forces are blind and controlling and manipulative, and that your own unique individuality is what actually makes you powerful and not just a slave to them. But then when you look at priests, they're just light or dark, so I guess they're just slaves. And I just never really got like excited at all about being a priest in the Warcraft universe until I thought of this idea and how cool and easy it would be to implement into their class identity. Also, in the story, there are just no priests anywhere. Let's face it, being a healer and supporting people is kind of girly, but priests don't really have a dedicated female character lead in the story. There's maybe Tyrande that they can look up to, and that's it. Velen is pretty dope, like I said earlier, but he doesn't really focus on the core things that would actually draw you into the class, and other classes get much cleaner, much more fitting, and much more compelling representations in the actual storyline. Through Velen, or a strong female priest leading character, we could have a strong focus on mental will, meditations, inner alignment to resist or embrace the shadow, and in real life, healing people can be manly. Loving selflessly and giving embodies every aspect of masculinity. There's selflessness, provision, emotional stability, understanding, and righteousness. It can also be very feminine, of course. It can be nurturing, supportive, empathetic, and graceful. We could also have a villain Shadow Priest character, and I'm not even going to mention what they could embody because you could just watch a Star Wars movie and any Sith from any of them just do it really well. There is Xal'atath, and Xal'atath is cool. I like Xal'atath, but she's just power hungry. And that's it. And she's also a Void Lord. She's not really a Shadow Priest. She's just kind of an extremely bland, one-dimensional villain. You see stuff like this with the warrior characters being heroic and stuff like that, and if we expanded these traits in the priest characters, it would really expand the appeal. In Vanilla WoW, priests have plenty of healing, damaging, and utility spells to do whatever they want with. There are other classes that have it way worse off in the lore and in the practical game, so priests definitely have a spot. They're in a very good spot in almost every expansion, and you don't really have all that much to complain about, but they're just not very cool. And I think if we improved the marketing, we could really increase the hype and increase the amount of people that play this class, because even people that I know that have played this class for 15 years, it's the only thing that they play, they're masters of it, they're not really that hyped about it. At the end of the day, the priest is kind of cursed with being the bland generic healer support guy, but it had room to be so much more and it deserved so much better. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching the whole video. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you next time.